3 years. It has really transformed my life. It changed it completely. I don't do anything else. I'm not fucking painting doors. I'm just
riding the dicks of these cunts.
Uh-oh. You guys were willing enough to support me sucking dicks of these cunts.
I'm riding dicks.
Oh, she's gonna do it.
Too long, so long.
Riding the dicks. The dicks of these cunts. So long.
He's riding the dicks of these cunts.
So long.
Dicks of these cunts.
Just riding dicks.
Riding dicks.
You like it, don't you?
We're riding dicks.
Dick riding fucking
Like if I made a live stream and I titled "Riding Dicks," it works really well in the search engine. All these people in the chat, they're just riding dicks.
They jumped on it. They jumped on it without touching.
Jumped on
Dicks.
They were riding dicks.
We're taking you guys with us.
I'm a fat 8 inches, mate. Forget the 6 inches.
Is this anything I can do, Mookie?
riding.
That's it. Last fight.
Who's riding dicks here?
That's it. That's it. I'm riding dicks here.
He's riding dicks here.
Riding dicks.
I'm actually glad I was born with just one eye. Here, haters.
You dick riding fucking
We're riding dicks.
Quattro B.
We're at a gay bar having dinner.
He's riding the dicks of these cunts.
They're riding dicks.
This might be like a prisoner exchange.
It's like hiring a hitman.
What do we have to do for some clips around here?
Watch Nicholas come back. I'm riding dicks. I'm riding dicks. I'm riding dicks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. What's going on, folks? It is a bank holiday in the United Kingdom, so I thought, you know what? Why don't we do a little bit of watch talk for the folks out in the UK, and then follow it up with a little bit of dessert on the dungeon by the UK's finest son. We got, or Scotland's finest son, let's call it. We got Mental Jock. So I'm going to be doing a bit of watch talk here for you guys. The first pillow. We did a ton of drama yesterday on the dungeon. I actually told Archie and Bear yesterday, we had a lot of momentum on the dungeon pre-show, almost like 180 viewers, right? I told AC3, I'm like, honestly, just keep it on the dungeon. It's probably, it's good PR for the dungeon. Obviously, the dungeon's been doing really well lately. Like, we've been cracking like close to 200 viewers, whether that's with Archie or without Archie. So the dungeon's been pretty solid, guys. And yeah, I kind of told Archie, I said, it's probably worth your time to spend some time on the dungeon and, just really drive that channel as well. And look, JL was there yesterday. I think he was super happy to see AC3 on the dungeon, super chatting in and everything else. But it was a lot of great fun yesterday. But I thought, what, we've been lacking a bit of the first pillow talk, so I'm going to bang out about an hour and a bit for you guys on the first pillow, and then we will transfer over to the drama side with Jock on the dungeon. So let's see who's in the chat. We got BC, always here very, very early. Says it's pure shite. I agree with you. Got one, you see it. Asking for green room. Yep, we do want to see the green room back. We got AD Never Calling, who says yup, and says I'm actually glad I was born with 2 eyes and a brain. All right, we got Basil's Beezels in the chat. Nice to see you, Basil's. We got Zen in the chat. Good to see you as well. And the Whiskey Reaper, who has the most epic beef tongue save of all time. Archie showed that on the video yesterday on his on the dungeon, actually, where Whiskey Reaper was grilling up I think it was a beef tongue. And you get to see an epic save by the Whiskey Reaper. So good to see you, man. I always appreciate you supporting the show. And I think we're pretty caught up. So I wanted to talk a bit about watches. I think this is the first watch a lot of people have asked me about. What do I think of the new world time date? Reference 5330G. So that's a white gold complication Patek Philippe. You can see here on the screen. And when I think of this piece, so what Patek did, what do they change compared to like the world time that Archie has or the world time that I have? Number one, obviously it has a date, and it's gone, I think, from a 38.5 in the previous gen up to a 40 using the same movement. We're talking about the micro rotor 240 movement, which, to be honest with you, was in the same watch that the Watch Reporter has, which is a 36 mil 3940. So, yeah, like I think they had to put the date on it because if they're trying to make the case size bigger to 40 from a 38.5, like you're gonna have a lot of like just space, and that's where you can see at the top of the past the city ring and into the date ring, you can see that extra space that they had to put, to make the size larger from a 30.5 to a 40 is where that date fits in. Where I think the real like loss here on this piece is that like if you look at the dial in the center of the dial, maybe I'll get off the video and I might just go into this watch specifically. When we look here in the center of the dial, right? So this carbon motif pattern, like in the previous generation, whether it's Archie's World Time or mine, it was a hand guilloche dial, right? Not a stamped carbon motif dial. And so you're really losing out on, when you have a hand guilloche dial on any watch, it's likely going to be a quote unquote piece unique, right? No two dials are going to be the same because obviously it's done by hand on a lathe, right? So or on an engine turn. Well, they're basically engine turning by hand the guilloche, and you've seen this on other channels. I mean, Higgins is pretty. He's talked about this numerous times and how difficult it is, and he even tried, his stab at guilloche, and it was really, really difficult to get it perfect. And the rate of failure can be pretty high on the dials, right? So when you lose that in a watch and you kind of go to a stamp dial, like to me, that really I think that really messes with, really what you're getting, the value in the watch, right? And I'll show you guys an example. I'll show you my watch, the 5230G, and I'll show you guys kind of what I mean by the guilloche and the dial. So I'll pull up a 5230. So this is the previous generation model to the one I have on the screen. You can see here in the on the dial, it's completely hand guilloche. It's done by hand, and it's a very, very beautiful. It is a very, very beautiful addition to the watch. You can see here, without a date, it seems to work just fine. Like when they're trying to increase the size, guy, like if you see here where they've increased the size, right? Like they had to add this date realistically because I mean, if you see it without that, like the watch it would appear pretty small, right? Trying to go from a 38.5 to a 40 from a movement that realistically was in 36 mil watches, yeah, like could be a it seems like they had to do it in my opinion. And I mean, do you really need a date on a world time? That's kind of the other thing, right? Because to me, one of the biggest charms of owning this watch is, it's a set it and forget it type of piece, right? Like you just set the time and you don't have to fuck with the date. You don't have to mess around with anything. You just make sure that you're in the right time zone. And for those that don't know, when you kind of see how to read this watch, so for example, this is set to Mexico time because Mexico is at 12 o'clock, right? So this is Central Time, and it is 10:07 p.m. Central Time, right? Because you can see here we're in the day-night indicator on the dial here is showing 20. We're past 2200, which is 10 p.m. as opposed to if it was 10 a.m., which is where it is in the Dhaka, which is in Bangladesh, in that time zone, right? That would show the 10 a.m. piece. So, it's really a pretty simple watch to set, not really difficult. You just got to set your time zone or your home time to 12 o'clock. Set your time, make sure you're in the right day night. And again, you just really like turn it like any other watch into, from AM to PM. And that's it. Like super, super simple. When you add the date into it and everything, it's unnecessary to me. Like when you're traveling, do you really need to know it's yesterday somewhere else? Like, it's just, you can tell that from the day night indicator pretty simply. So to me, it's a bit overkill. It's a bit redundant. I don't really see the point. I don't think it adds to anything, right? Like if I were to reimagine the world time, right? So this is our previous gen world time that I have on the screen. And what you can see here in this is very, very cool because, these lugs, are really, to me, the really, really masterpiece of this watch. And these lugs actually were based on the Patek Philippe 2523, a legendary serially produced, and not really produced in very many numbers, but serially produced world time for Patek. Let me see if I can find one up on here that doesn't require me to do a bunch of ad block disabling and stuff like that. But I want to show you guys what I mean by the lugs and the inspiration on the lugs compared to the current iteration. So this is a Patek Philippe 2523, and you can see the lugs, kind of have that welded on that welded on look. And this is really the inspiration for the last gen of the World Timer. You can see here a similar type of construction with the lugs. When you move into the current model of the 5330, like you lose that, right? You're going into the stamped case. Now this is also a bad thing. Is the case is likely stamped as well. It has the two-step lugs that you see here on the 5212. Which they're making a bit more ubiquitous or homogenous around the Patek Philippe range of dress watches. You're seeing a two-step lug or a three-tier lug system. Where, in all honesty, I'm not the biggest fan of these. Like I have, like my perpetual calendar has the three-step lugs. The weekly calendar has the two-step lugs. Like they're nice, but like when I compare these to like this piece, I mean it's just so much better and so much cooler, especially kind of when you're talking about something that's going to look a little bit more historic to the legendary 2523. So, and again, right, these historical world times were world times without dates. They weren't world time dates. And they were, were they loved or were they not loved? Look, the world time's not really a popular model. Patek Philippe as a brand does this complication the absolute best, in my opinion. But, again, right, like we're talking about one of the dogs of the range, not really like, at the forefront of what, is very popular with these models. But yeah, like, do I think that they did a great job on the 5330? Look, I think they did an okay job. We have Van Lux who's in the chat is saying the Canadian tuxedo. That's what this nickname is being called, the Canadian tuxedo, with the it's calfskin on the strap, but it has that denim look, which is kind of giving that whole Canadian tuxedo vibe, right? You got denim on denim. And look, I would say that this was definitely designed by a team that's looking to bring in a more contemporary buyer, someone who's look where Patek is struggling is they want to keep their tradition of being a dress watch company, primarily in precious metal. Just like there's a lot of them out there. It's not like Patek is the only one doing this, right? Like FP Journe is primarily a dress watch company. Lange is primarily a dress watch company. And many others are primarily dress watch companies. So Patek, and what their MO has been not to, and Terry Stern said it himself, I don't want to become IWC. When IWC went into steel many years ago, they couldn't come back because everyone was asking, like, why don't you just produce more Nautiluses or Aquanauts or even more sports ranges? Like, why are you holding on to this tradition? And that's really Patek's MO. They've always done this, right? Like and it's not that they didn't get with the times, even in the quartz crisis, right? Like Patek was making quartz watches. They were doing it like everybody else was because at that time, quartz wasn't necessarily a cheap watch. When quartz first came out, it wasn't necessarily the cheap watch out there. I'll show you guys the first quartz watch. It's called the Astron. It's by Seiko. And I'm gonna pull you up a picture of the Seiko Quartz Astron, and just to kind of give you an idea around like how quartz was actually perceived, back in the day. This Quartz Astron, when we talk about the original Quartz Astron here, like this is a gold piece, right? Seiko themselves, they didn't release the first quartz in some like plastic shitter, right? Like it was a gold piece. Like so, these other brands, also were pretty much at the forefront of being part of that and being part of cutting edge technology. And I think that Patek today is trying to find a happy medium between a contemporary buyer that's traditionally probably moving up from Rolex, so they've already got a bit of a sports watch bias, I would say, in terms of the aesthetic look of their pieces, that want to get into high horology or they want to get into the status of a Patek, and they're struggling to find something that is really going to fit the bill. And I'll show you guys like what I mean. Like if you go into the collections of Patek and we look at like what type of pieces you'd be looking for, most folks would be beelining into the Nautilus and Aquanaut range. But those are, as everybody knows, are virtually impossible to get at a AD for retail. So oftentimes they're customers are asked to look in other ranges, right? Specifically in the Calatrava complications or Grand Complications range. And when you go into any of these ranges, right, like it's all dress watches, call it, right? Even though for example, Patek is trying to make their dress watch a bit more contemporary looking, a bit more sporty looking, to appease people that are looking for something that they can wear, not just really with a suit or something more formal, but like, they can wear with t-shirt and jeans and what. Now, look, I'm of the belief that honestly, like, I've rocked pieces like this with a t-shirt and jeans, right? You just need the confidence to be able to not give a fike about what you're wearing, because in all honesty, like, I think we, as watch collectors, I think we really limit ourselves by putting, watches into certain buckets like, oh, it's a dress watch, or oh, it's a sports watch, or, they look at sizes and they're like, oh, 36 is too small, or oh, 44 is too big, right? Like I can see arguments on all sides, right? When people say 44 is too big, I'm like, well, a Panerai Luminor will fit a decent amount of people, right? Even though it's a 44 mil, and it definitely reaches kind of that top end of being a big watch for even my wrist at 7 inches. It's still wearable. It's still something I can pull off in 44 mils. And on the flip side too, in 36 mils, right? Like with a 7-inch wrist, I can pull off a 3940. I tried on a 3940 actually last year in Boston, and honestly, it fit a lot better than the perpetual calendar chronograph, the 3970. And I'll show you guys a Patek 3940. This watch has been a topic of discussion, in the Archieverse actually for a little bit. Diego's looking at getting one of these, and the Watch Reporter has one of these pieces, the legendary perpetual calendar 3940. I'll pull it up here on the screen for you guys to see. And this is really the perpetual calendar when you think of perpetual calendars with Patek, right? Everybody thinks of the sub-dial variant of the perpetual calendar, which was famous by this watch. This watch was produced, I think it came out in like 85, and then it was produced for like 20 years, guys. Like it was a long run piece, and it was very, very popular. It was the watch of the CEO/president of Patek Philippe, Thierry Stern's father, Philippe Stern. He wore a 3940 perpetual calendar, and rumors were that he never serviced the watch. So really, really interesting story. Now, Archie doesn't like to hear that story because Archie's like, well, he's the president. Why does he care about servicing it? But, I mean, if the story is true, I mean, that's a pretty epic story that, even he felt that it was, it was still working to the point of not needing it to go to service right away. So, 39, very, very popular, very, very contentious piece right now in the Archieverse, because Archie has been spruiking this whole narrative around like it needs to be bigger. It needs to, big watches, big watches, big watches. However, we're seeing the trend of watches actually go smaller, not necessarily, going to, I mean, who the fuck is really going to wear a 44 mil quote unquote dress watch or a watch on a leather strap? They just look ridiculous. And on the flip side too, who's going to wear a 30, 31 or 33 millimeter watch on a strap as well? Could also look ridiculous, right? Like, even though watches have gotten larger, I think that sweet spot of 36 to 42 is really where this is going to end up. I think that, like, from a size perspective, if we're talking about most people, right, and everything we kind of talk about on YouTube is very, I think, Western world focused, but in the Eastern part of the world, like, there are folks with smaller wrists, and smaller sizes are very popular. So we have to look at this holistically, because also, if you think about it, over time, let's talk about, because think about it, you guys are buying these watches today. Let's say you're buying all the hype watches, right? Like you're buying the Daytonas and everything else, the hype watches. As tastes will shift in 20 or 30 years, as other developing economies start having more purchasing power. Let's talk about like India, China, and in other areas of the world, Brazil, that have more buying power, right? Like we're going to likely see, obviously, those markets, becoming more important to these brands, and these brands even catering towards them, where we could see smaller sizes becoming more popular. So I wouldn't put all of my eggs in the large size basket yet, right? So if you're kind of at that stretch limit of certain pieces that are bigger, you probably want to think of sizes that are maybe a bit more in line. Now, look, I think 40 millimeters, can be kind of the limit on a, quote unquote dress watch or watch on a leather strap, because, and even my perpetual calendar fits like a small 40. It fits like a 39. It doesn't really fit like a 40. And, I wouldn't want it to fit like a 40 or 41, because, when you're looking at pieces that need to be a little bit more tailored, something that, you want it to have a nicer fit rather than just being this like dinner plate on your wrist. Like, you want to make sure that you're getting that sweet spot. So I think really 36 to 42 for most people is the sweet spot. Like, do I think people are going to get into this whole, game around like it has to be 40 and 41? I think over time, because of other developing markets, that they're going to, have increased importance to the brands, that like you're going to see, I think, popular 36 millimeter models that are going to become hyped, right? So, which I think is naturally going to pull the market back into not perceiving 36 mil as a negative. Today, we perceive 36 mil as a negative, right? You talk about the Day-Date, if we go into Rolex, we talk about the date, for example, right? Like everybody constantly like beelines to the 40. However, the 36 also has like, the 36 also has a decent amount of pieces, and variations that you can get, from certain, in certain ranges in the date. So if we pick the 36 mil date, and you're configuring this date, for example, we can go into, we obviously got Everose, we got Platinum. So if we want to go with a Platinum 36 mil, let's go mess with a bezel, like a nice fluted bezel. 36 mil ice blue fluted bezel, 73,000 Canadian dollars. Beautiful piece though, right? Like I could see this watch specifically, in an Indian, market or a Chinese market, may not be the color, in vogue at that day, but let's say it was, right? Like this is a killer piece that I think in those markets, that may be more centric towards smaller wrists, that these could definitely, especially if there's more people buying, that these could become definitely very hyped in the future. And that's why I'm saying don't overlook 36 mil. And I think many of us, those who've been collecting for a long time, we've got Bear Clooney in the chat as well. Like I can guarantee you, Bear's had 36 mil Rolexes, whether it's date justs or day dates over time. Bear's been collecting for a heck of a long time. And at those times, when he wore those 36 mil watches, they probably didn't look out of place because everybody else was kind of wearing the same. And when it becomes ubiquitous like that, and the eye kind of perceives it as a natural look, because honestly, if 36 on a man, you put on a dress shirt, and you put on either a sweater or a long sleeve shirt, it won't necessarily be perceived as small, right? If you're wearing a short sleeve shirt where you can kind of see its proportion, especially if you're a larger guy, then yeah, like it could be perceived as a bit smaller. But honestly, I think 36 can be a lot more tailored for larger men. Can be obviously the perfect size for men with smaller wrists. But I do really believe that, and Dodger is saying this, he's chiming in here, 36 was okay in the 80s, right? And again, though in the 80s, like, I mean, some 33 ml watches were popular, but honestly, 36 was bang on in the 80s, wasn't considered small. And everyone talks about, we're bigger these days, we're fatter these days, we're all this these days. Maybe, right? But again, I think that that's also a potentially Western-centric viewpoint of it. And today, yeah, like that dominates the conversation. Obviously, some of the biggest markets are centered around the United States, and Europe and other places where, yeah, maybe sizes are getting a bit bigger. However, I think over time, if you really, I've always thought of this, guys, like the old man's watch. We always, why is this, and I'll give you an example of an old man's watch, or what we would consider an old man's watch. Let me try to pull one up here. Let's look at this one here, right? Like a lot of folks consider even this one to be a bit of an old man's watch. This 5227. I'm not sharing it on the screen here. Give me a second. 5227. People perceive this as the old man's watch. Well, why do we perceive this as the old man's watch? Right? Well, a lot of us have experiences of our grandparents or people that we knew that were a bit elderly that were traditionally wearing these pieces because at the time they were popular, and for those folks that is what their eye likes. Fast forward to today, and we're wearing Rolex, right? Like we're wearing stuff like this. If you think about it like this, think of your children or your grandchildren, or you're seeing grandpa or dad wearing these watches. Like what is going through their mind? Right? Is that necessarily attractive to them, or is that the new grandpa's watch? Right? And this is where fashion and trends, it's so cyclical, right? Like, what's not in vogue, today, in certain cases of the word, like a dress watch, maybe in vogue tomorrow. And I'll tell you why I truly believe stuff like this, because, I always use the brand, Daniel Wellington is a great example, right? Daniel Wellington, everybody remembers Daniel Wellington from a few years ago. Wildly popular with the youth, and primarily were watches on a leather strap, or what we collectors call dress watches, right? Daniel Wellington was primarily very simple, affordable dress watches. Well, if the premise that the dress watch is dead and it's an old man's watch, rings true, well, why the heck were the youth buying them, right? And everybody says, well, they're cheap. Well, yeah, I mean, if it's just because it's cheap doesn't mean everybody buys something that they don't like, especially when you're putting it on your body as a fashion statement, especially even more so for the youth. So obviously the youth didn't perceive a watch on a leather strap as a dress watch or an old man's watch. And this is why I'm cautioning people that are really kind of like going hard into, and when we talk about investments and we talk about like, going into this whole strategy around making money on watches and hoping that, this popularity will never change is I think you guys are playing with fire. I think, a lot of folks don't have enough experience in collecting to understand, the waves of how, watch collecting has shifted over the years. Many people are surprised to find out that Panerai was the hype watch in the 90s, right? Like, who would have thunk it, right? Panerai being the hype watch in the 90s. Today, I mean, you couldn't give Panerais away. I still love Panerai. It's funny, my dealer, Bear's in the chat, and, him and I, we have the same dealer in Canada. My dealer, he gets access to Panerai all the time, and I'm like one of the only buyers that buys from him because he's like, people just don't want Panerais. And I'm like, cool, man, that's good for me because I love Panerais, and, especially the Edipams. If I can find an Edipam, like a 111 on a sick deal, something that's nice condition, potentially with a collection of straps, man, like that's my jam all day long. I love those watches. I'll pull up a PAM 111 for you guys here to understand the love that I have for Panerai, especially the Eda versions of the PAMs. I'll pull up one here on an Everest band. Try to get you guys a nice photo. So this is a very, very nice Luminor. Luminor, obviously small sub-seconds at 9. This is a sandwich dial. As you can see here, it's a stencil. So basically there's a whole there's a whole disc of lume underneath, and then they put a stencil dial on top to give it that 3D effect. Like, and just a strap monster. You can throw on all these kind of straps on this classic Luminor case. Like, just a very, very perfect watch, and an Eda version. And people always ask me, like, man, why would you buy the Eda version? Why don't you just buy the new version? And look, I'll tell you guys, I've had multiple Eda PAMs, and I think my last one, 111, I think the mainspring broke or was fucked up, and took it to my independent watchmaker who formerly worked at RSC and now just works out of his bench at home. And I dropped it off, and he said, yeah, like this movement, this Eda movement that's in this watch, he's like, yeah, man, I trained on this movement, so super easy to fix. Parts are super accessible. And times when I drop Rolexes off of this guy, it could be weeks before I get that back. Like, this watch is serviced within a week back, super cheap, on parts. And just it's just something that you can service super regularly, very easy to keep going, and a watch that you can truly enjoy, not at a huge price. I think these are probably like a couple, $3-4 grand maybe on the used market. Like, just a cool piece that honestly you can just keep going at a very, very affordable rate. Really cool design. This is one of the only watches, in my opinion, that like you can spot from the other end of the room. And I think that like where a lot of folks they falter on dress watches is they're just circular watches, right? And there's no differentiation between them. It's very hard to differentiate if you're wearing this watch or if you're wearing, for example, let me pull up another piece here, like this watch from far away. Outside of maybe noticing what Archie calls the 3 eyes on the dial, honestly, it's quite difficult to differentiate, dress watches from the past because, or from each other that are there, because it's just a circular watch, potentially in precious metal, but they all kind of look the same from afar. This watch, you'll be able to spot this watch a mile away, right? It's a Panerai. Those large crown guards, the signature crown guard on the Luminors, the Luminor case, like that is that is a watch that's identifiable, and that's why Panerais were popular, because it was easy to identify that they were a Panerai. Obviously big watches were big. Sylvester Stallone and a lot of the media, the celebrities that were supporting these people. I think Arnold and both him and Sly were both supporting Panerai back in the day. Like, there was that association of celebrity that you see today in Rolex. You don't see necessarily a Panerai, but you see it with Rolex in terms of celebrities either wearing Rolexes or wearing, sport Pateks. Back then it was, you saw them wearing Panerais, large watches, very identifiable. You knew you were wearing a Panerai. You knew this wasn't your standard, two-tone Datejust. And that's really why it was popular, right? It was the design of it. And this is why I'm telling people, like, just because you think this is popular today, does not mean it's going to be popular tomorrow. I would say that certain icons have a better likelihood of being popular. Submariner is a good example, or anything that's really survived over time. And Sub's been around for the 50s. It's been really more about evolution than revolution on that piece. I think the sub is always going to be popular. I think the Datejust is always going to be popular. I think the Date 8 is always going to be popular. The GMT has not always been popular, right? It's very, very hot today. That doesn't mean it's going to be hot tomorrow. Explorer 2 never really took off, was never really a very popular model. I think that's going to continue to be a bit of the dog of the range. The popularity on Rolex, has always been really centered in that Submariner lineup. That's been an extremely popular lineup for the brand. Daytonas in recent times have been popular, haven't been popular forever. I don't see the Daytonas ever pulling back. I think Daytonas are always going to be popular, just because of social media, just because of more information that's out there, right? Like, and again, the internet also plays a huge part into like how history may not necessarily repeat itself. Like I'm saying, hey, history may repeat itself, but in all honesty, history may not necessarily repeat itself, simply because of the internet, right? If we talk about like the Daytona being a dog for many years, all these stories around people having Daytonas that they had in their in their drawers and everything else, and their desks, because nobody wanted to buy them. Well, today I don't think that's ever going to go back. I think just with the popularity of the Daytona and just the Daytona, just everybody talking about this watch all the time. Either we're going to get Daytona fatigue is one thing. And I really don't think we're going to get to that point, just because the Daytona is extremely well loved. You got the Paul Newman, you've got all these, auction houses that are spruiking, the Daytona. Like, I don't ever see the Daytona, at least in modern times, ever getting any loss of momentum. We've got a super chat from Trading Profits. Thank you so much, Trading Profits. Appreciate you checking out the show as always. This is a UK bank holiday show for you guys. I wanted to make sure I got a bit of watch content before we get into the drama with Jock. After this, I will be transferring us over to Mental Jock in about, let's say, 30 to 45 minutes. Trading Profits, 5 British pounds. Tan, given trends change, how often should punchers flip their collection to ensure being ahead of the market? What should be held and what should be sold? This is a great question. So it depends also, Trading Profits, on why you're collecting, right? Not everybody collects for investments. Some people do, right? Collect for investments, and those folks will have to flip all the time, right? Like they'll have to take their gains, because if you think about it, the way watches work is people don't necessarily want, at least our market today doesn't necessarily want the old model. It's like the car market, where we're going to see older models eating a bit of depreciation because the new model came out, right? Like you're seeing right now that the newer model or inflation, right? Like you're seeing the newer model of the Panda Daytona come out, which is more expensive than, which is selling at a higher, at a higher dollar amount than the previous version of the Panda, right? Whether that's inflation or desirability, right? It's still more expensive. And then people are still, gunning for that latest and greatest. So I think those folks are going to have to flip every 5 to 10 years, depending on when the refreshes happen on their pieces, to stay up to speed. Everybody else, you know what? Like if we really break it down, guys, like the fashion trends on watches, especially if you have some pretty safe pieces like a Submariner, a Calatrava, like iconic, designs that are timeless. It's like a 911. Trading Profits. Like you drive a 1980s 911, people will know it's a 911. And people will respect it, as a 911. So I think certain watches, won't need to be refreshed, can still remain iconic. Everything else is really on personal taste. It depends on how you're collecting. For example, I collect what I like. I like collect for the history. I collect for pieces that mean something to me. So from my perspective, I don't think I will be flipping based on trends or flipping based on, fashion trends or even market trends, right? Like, I mean, the last 2 watches I bought, the 5230 World Time and the 5320 Perpetual. I mean, those are wildly. I mean, they're not popular. I won't say they're wildly unpopular, but they're not popular. Both of them are selling at 30% discounts on the secondary market to retail. So I'm getting massive value. I'm like, fuck, man, for $60K, I can get a perpetual calendar. I mean, that's the same price as Bear's Aquanaut. Bear's Aquanaut's slightly lower, maybe in like the mid 50s. It's a similar price to a Meteorite Pepsi, Bear's Aquanaut, right? Like, or I could get a perpetual calendar in precious metal. Like for me, as a collector, Trading Profits, my grail was always the Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, because to me, it's the pinnacle of all brands. I feel that brand has everything, right? It's not missing anything. They do high horology finishing. They do watches, sport watches. They do, amazing dress watches in precious metal. They do all kinds of complications. Like for me, such a brand that's kind of an all-rounder, at the top of the game, I would say. for me is what I wanted. And then, the perpetual calendar means a lot to that brand. It's, they were the brand that created the first, serially produced perpetual calendar wristwatch. And yeah, it was just an icon for me. So like, again, for me, I don't think I'm going to need to refresh. I'm going to refresh when I want to refresh, right? Trading profits when I find something that interests me more. But I think if you're trying to keep up with the trends, you're going to have to go every 5 to 10 if you want to at least keep up with the Joneses in terms of like, in terms of collectability, desirability. We got Angelic Slater chiming in on the 911 analogy. 80s 911s look old and they always have club plates. That's actually true. And they're too expensive to drive on the road because parts are too hard to get, so they come out on Sunday only. Yeah, and actually amplified Angelic on the Australian side. There was a really, really cool Australian podcast on Porsches called I think it was called Porsche Cooled. I would totally recommend checking that out. I think they have it on Apple Music or Spotify. And it was an Australian. I think it's very Australian focused. I think it was 2 Australian guys that don't live in Australia. I think one of them doesn't live in Australia anymore. But they talked about obviously how difficult it was to get 911s, especially right-hand drive 911s in Australia that were actually, I believe in Australia and New Zealand, there was just a very little amount. So a lot of them are even imported from England, which are lesser value than actually getting an Australian car or a New Zealand car. So even then in 911s, there's a whole lot of collecting when it comes to even just the Australia, New Zealand specific market. But yeah, I'm actually super I actually follow a bit of the Australian car culture. Super exciting to me. Like, you guys know I love cars. I follow the UK car culture, the Australian car culture. Yeah, I'm just I find it fascinating just how the world is a bit different in other markets. We got Van Lux member chat. Thanks so much, man. Using this member chat here on the UK Bank Holiday stream. I know it's a little early for you on the West Coast, but appreciate you. Member for 17 months. It looks like chocolate. It looks like a trophy and fire. But I don't know, man. It's not really coming out. The picture doesn't look it's a little fuzzy on my side. Hopefully I got that right. But yeah, Angelic, what I meant by the 911 analogy is it's evolution versus revolution. You can identify that it's a 911 pretty easily. My nephews that are car crazy and they're 5 years old, they know what a Lambo is. They know what a Porsche is. Like, they can identify, and that's really important, right? Like, identification, by somebody who is, looking at that piece on your wrist that has importance to people, right? May not be everybody, right? May not be this guy, Higgins, who doesn't give a fight, and I remember when I met Higgins last year in the summer, I told him, hey, because a lot of people sometimes have a bit of a, I don't know, I think they make up some assumptions about me when they meet me, if they're, if we're going out for dinner, they want to make it somewhere super expensive or super fancy. Nah, that's not who I am, right? I'm a very simple guy. I like to eat in hole in the wall places. And you guys have seen how I dress. I dress where, I dress down and I, wear hoodies, wear jeans, even though I may wear dress or designer stuff, I just try to, I try to be comfortable, right? So I remember meeting Higgins last year, and I told him, I said, look, man, I'm going to be wearing my perpetual calendar. I'm going to be wearing shorts and t-shirts. Don't freak out. And Higgins is like, man, I'm totally the same. I'm going to, I don't wear dress shirts and shit for these pieces. And, it really comes down to your personal style, right? I don't think we need to live in boxes that Bear said it himself, right? Bear's like, well, I'm not cool enough or I'm not young enough to wear pieces like you do, where it can be, you can wear it with a hoodie and your, baseball cap and, it looks different. He's like, when I do that, I look like an old guy or something like that. And I would disagree with you, Bear, on that comment because, Bear does also wear, I think we've seen mostly some sporty stuff, polo shirt, golf shirt, jeans. Like, I think he could pull it off, no problem. On a leather strap. But look, I mean, for him, the Aquanaut looks better to him, right? And I can't tell him that that's wrong, right? Or that his Submariner looks better to him, because at the end of the day, we buy these pieces as jewelry. Like, as much as Higgins and I want to talk about, elitism and high horology and all this bullshit, the watch doesn't look good on your wrist. Like, you're not going to want to keep it. You're going to flip it. You're never going to keep a watch that's just terrible because, for whatever reason, right? Like, outside of maybe, if it's the Le Mans and the Le Mans is going to make you, $500,000, right? Like, aside from that, I mean, most watches won't make you that much money. And so it's very important to buy one that actually, is going to look good on the wrist. Now, looking at the sub, right? Like, this watch is, in my opinion, has been, it's been pretty much, evolution, instead of revolution, right? I'll pull you up my favorite Rolex Submariner 6538. actually, for those that don't know, apparently Gorilla Time from the Colony has one of these. So one day I'd love to have Gorilla Time on the panel to showcase his 6538. I don't know if he has a 6538 or a 6536, but he does have one of these radium dial subbies. But this is the 37 millimeter, what they call the Doctor No. This is the Submariner that was popularized in the James Bond films, the early James Bond films. I know Higgins, you're in the chat. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the watch that was given to Sean Connery was off of Albert Broccoli's wrist. I think it was his watch, the one that you see on the. I mean, it wasn't on a NATO strap. It was like, I don't know what the fuck it was. I think it was like. It's like, I don't think it's. I think it's like a. It's not a NATO. Is what it is. It's something else. But the one that where the strap is too small, you can see kind of the lugs or the spring bars, sorry, hanging out because the strap is too small. For the for the case. So, anyways, this is the OG. We would call it, one of the OG Submariners. Very, very popular, very, very expensive because I believe its connection to James Bond, obviously Big Crown. And I was asking Archie actually this the other day around what's a better buy, the 6538 Rolex, and I'll show you guys chrono here on this Rolex 6538. And if we sort this by price low to high, I mean, our cheapest 6538, Big Crown, in the United States is $63,000 US, right? And again, this one, as you can see here, may not be, very original. Could be, a relume on certain things. I mean, this could be its original radium. I'm not sure. But again, right? It's you'd have to really go through the description of this, and yeah, I mean, this is a 6538, the Doctor No. Now, obviously, better examples, that we're getting into like the hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So this is a very, very expensive piece. This can definitely, jump up in price, right? Comparing that to the 6536, this is the small crown version. So also a radium dial, 37 millimeters. But if you look at the price, right, like, this ain't that bad, right? Like we're getting into like, I love how this guy put it as James Bond. Higgins, correct me if I'm wrong on the 6536. I don't think the 6536 was ever a Bond watch, but this article or this ad here on Chronos calling it a Bond watch. I don't think the 6536 was ever in Bond. I think it was a 6538. I'll blow this up a bit because I think the screen's a bit small. But you're seeing like prices in the 25, 27. And again, these seem to have like obviously replacement dials. Like this one looks like it's a newer dial, and obviously a relume. So that's obviously going to mess with the price. As original as you can get for this would be pretty cool. But like again, right? Like we're hovering in the like. Let's go to maybe I'll go from the price high to low. Let's see how this compares to the big. So the biggest difference is the big crown versus a small crown here on this sub. And I mean, your highest price is like 100K. Like it's nothing. Hey, Higgy baby, what do we got? Oh, perpetual calendar. I love it.
What about that combo here? Do you like the color combo?
Color combo's good. You remember when I said that comment to you when you were meeting up with me last year? I'm like, hey man, I may just wear my perpetual calendar with like a t-shirt, baseball cap, and some shorts. And you're like looking at me. I think you said it to me. You're like, well, what do you expect? Like, I'm gonna wear like a suit. Like, you're like, I'm gonna wear a t-shirt as well. Like,
yeah. In all honesty, I mean, I was giving you a free pass for casual clothing, but you were dressed really bad, I must say. I mean, we Germans, we're dressed casually, but at least we have some style. I mean, your stuff looked like from a charity auction.
That's the best way, man. That's the look I'm going for, the homeless look, right? Homeless with a perpetual calendar. That's what Higgins called it. Homeless with a perpetual calendar on the wrist. Whole Milk says Higgy with the lime green sweater. Actually looks really good, man. Yep. Angelic says, look at that cuff, 1973. People like it.
No, it looks label here on it.
No, it looks great. Let me ask you, the 6536. Somebody posted it on Chronos of James Bond watch. I don't think that's a Bond watch though.
6536 is the one with the small crown. That is not
Correct.
the James Bond.
Correct.
6538 would be.
Correct. And there's a huge price difference, Higgins, between them. Like the most expensive 6536 I can find, small crown, is like 100K, right? So it's probably like the most original. Like it's probably could be even a first owner. Who knows? But yeah, that's you right there, German guy. Who got it? Who got you? That was that Jock or Jamie Opulence?
Jamie got it for me, and I received it from Dodger.
Hello and good afternoon from Germany, my friend. So we're talking. I was talking about the whole idea around And you know what? Let me. I think I have it up on the screen here. I have something on the screen. So this is the 6536 Submariner. Like we said, small crown. I mean, the highest price is 131K versus the 6538, which is, obviously, we described the Dr. No piece. Obviously, the connection to James Bond is heavily, I think, influencing the price here. But if you were a buyer, if you just wanted to buy a radium 37 mil sub, are you going with the 6538, paying triple the price, or do you think the 6536 small crown is good enough?
Oh, difficult question, because both are out of my range. Assuming that money doesn't play any role, I would get the big crown, and preferably with a 369 dial. But then that is even a higher level than a normal big crown. I had a 50. What is it? 50, 55. No, 50, 55. I think there is a later Submariner with a small crown, and that was all that I could afford. I think it's 5508.
5058. That's one Archie had. Yeah.
So I had that as a consignment when I was working at the AD, because that was the non-crown guard Rolex that I could afford. And unfortunately, the watchmaker talked me out of it. He said, why are you buying that shit? Because you can get a modern one with 30% off, which is the same amount of money. And I stupidly listened to his advice. I was young, dumb, and full of cum. So, so I didn't get that.
Yeah, so this is the 5508. Famous story that I like to troll Archie about is, if you guys ever seen me troll Archie on the 55, so Archie used to own this radium sub, beautiful watch. Like, look at this. Like, this is one of, like, I think this is such a nice design. I love the dial, love the little yellow accent, on the Submariner, like the gilt accent, call it. Like, this to me is really, really beautiful. And I always troll Archie that, like, he had made it a two-tone, but the reality is he actually bought a butchered 5508 that was converted into like a two-tone, which clearly, like, obviously messed with the aesthetics. But yeah, like, this watch is also a really, really good choice, and I think would be quite affordable. It's in that range.
Those are cheaper, as far as I know. 5508 are not that high, not that crazy.
Yeah, you can get them from anywhere. I think from the mid to, I think you can get probably mid 20s to into the 50s. Like, it depends on the condition. It depends on the provenance, how complete the set is, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, again, even the 6536, that's why the question is so compelling, because you say it's out of your price range, but 25 to 50, if you're really into vintage, you could probably stretch. I mean, you have a fucking $200,000, Richard Lange. Like, I'm sure if you truly wanted one, you can get one. We got a $2 super chat from Zeppy, who says, "How can I simp for Higgy if he ignored my question?" What did Zeppy ask?
Well, super chats always help Zeppy. So keep on simping. I was not seeing his comment. I apologize, because
I got it up on the screen for you. No, I actually missed it too. Let me pull this up here for Zeppy. Jonathan Quill Higgins III. What is your opinion on the Aquanaut?
The Aquanaut grew a lot on me. I was working at a Patek AD when it was introduced, and the concept was to get a Nautilus for young people. So it will be simpler and cheaper, and the rubber strap was something groundbreaking for Patek, just like those ugly denim straps that they introduced this year. So the concept was a much simpler case, because it doesn't have those complicated screws on the side. The case is a much simpler construction. The dial is stamped and is deliberately made look a little bit more simple. So that is how I grew up with the watch. And so for me, the Aquanaut for most of the time was the poor man's Nautilus. But recently it grew on me, and I see them all the time, and I think they're looking pretty cool. I mean, the fact that Paul McCartney is wearing one for decades now helps the image of the watch as well. Hey, ABC.
Hey, ABC, how you doing?
Hello, Tan. Hello, Higgy. I want to just say that I love my zeal and I love my Higgy.
Oh, we're happy
know
to
this?
have you, man. It's great. UK bank is it a bank holiday in Germany as well, Higgins, or is it just the
No.
UK? Just the
No.
UK. All right, UK bank holiday. We're doing it for the folks in the United Kingdom. Ark Yursky, $5. Buying son college grad watch before he's off to grad school. Very cool. I would like 3 to consider from younger enthusiasts. 6 3/8 inch wrist, so probably a smaller wrist with a 30K budget. Input wanted. All right, guys, what do you guys think? $30,000 US budget for his son, who's off to grad school. So statement piece. Like, what would you get your son if you had a son? For their grad school for 30K.
So for that size wrist, I would say 16/610 is not a bad choice. And
So
it's way less than 30K. You'll save a lot of money. You'll still have a lot of watch on your wrist. That's what I'd go for.
I want to pull up a 16/610 for you guys. Higgins, what do you think for 30 grand? What are you going to buy? I'm going to pull up the 16/610. This is ABC's choice. You got a pre-ceramic Submariner date.
So if he's asking for my advice, so I can only give my perspective. I don't know
You probably
anything
butcher
about
the
him.
lugs, Higgy. That's your perspective.
No, but I don't know anything about him and his son. Only from my perspective, 30K, I would go for a Laurent Ferrier Galet. Used, you can get them around 30,000. In my opinion, that gives you most bang of the buck. And I hate to say it, Patek World Timer, just like Tan has, is not a bad idea, although it's going to be a little bit more than 30K.
I'm going to disagree with Higgins. I think ABC has it probably, and again, like Higgins said, we don't know. Ark Yursky's son, maybe he's into that hierology stuff. I think that if it's just if your son is not into watches, or you're looking to get them something nice that they can keep for a long time, I think you got to go Rolex in that opinion. For me, 6 3/8 is a smaller size wrist. So yes, ABC is kind of going with the smaller profile, smaller case of the 16/610, which is pre-ceramic. Doesn't have the maxi case of the ceramic models. Look, I was more into the Datejust, side of it. I think that it's a watch that, is very, very, very well known, from Rolex in and of itself. People know what the Datejust is. If you got your son a Datejust, it'd be easy to identify. And the reason I say Datejust is because, ABC's choice is a 40 millimeter size. And you know what? A Datejust may just be more tailored, for example, for your son in a 36 mil size range, right? Like, and you've got tons of variety in terms of like, maybe I'll configure one for you here. You've got a ton of variety in terms of like what you can configure on the Datejust, making it the right size and really customized to what your son likes, whether they like, Romans or whether they like different type of indices. Let's go with like maybe oyster steel. And let's go just, move up. I mean, here you got an oyster, you've got a smooth bezel, right? Let's say, you may want a fluted bezel.
Tan, with all respect, you guys, with all respect, I really love you, particularly you, ABC. I mean, I hate Tanzil, but you're full of shit. So this guy is old money. He's not looking to buy.
How do you know he's old? How do you know he's old money though? But how do you know he's old
cheap.
money? But how do you know he's old money from this? He's just saying this is my budget.
He gave a $30,000 budget. This is not the traditional guy who buys.
Well, can I finish my like response and then you can critique it?
Okay.
Because the other option was a date if he felt that he needed something more special, right? Again, same story with the Datejust. Customizability of it. From a 36 mil size, he can really find whatever he wants in that. If he wanted to go with a date 18-238, is a good option. Again, I'm more focusing on the 36 mil size, which is probably going to be more appropriate for his son, from a size perspective, right? And the reason I'm saying Rolex is because he may not be a watch collector. He may not know what, a Laurent Ferrier is. So, I'm saying buy the watch that is more recognizable, more of, a statement piece, because again, he's buying it as a statement for his son's graduation. So yes, if he's old money and he's wanting to spend up to 30 and he wants it to be super special, yeah, grab the date, right? However, again, college grad, right? Maybe a date 8's a little too much, for somebody to be wearing at all points in time. So it depends on what it is. Statement piece, just to keep it as, in the corner. Yeah, day date. If you want something that's going to be usable, date just. Okay, now Higgins, now you can go. That was my answer.
Yeah, look, a used day date is cannot be compared to a used Laurent Ferrier. So for 30K, you get a used day date. Is that an appropriate graduation gift for a 20-year-old or 22? I have my doubts. And you said it correctly. It's probably a little bit too high profile. So I think the Higgy is right, like always.
Well, actually, you make a good point, Higgy, about going independent. So I was thinking Grunefeld for that price point. If there's anything in the Grunefeld catalog that might be sort of more suited to younger tastes.
You know what? This is also a good choice. AP 15500, 15510 also, kind of fits the bill, and actually probably is a good medium between what Higgins is saying, for quote unquote high horology, and what ABC and I are saying for an identifiable, a good statement piece that is of quality. And an AP, then you're probably chilling barefoot. If for 510, he may be stretching at 30K. I think they're probably like mid 30s. If you can get it at 30K, that would be a good choice. He may need to go 15,400, 15,500, 15,300. He may need to go used on that one if he's trying to reach that budget. But yeah, not a bad choice either. I think it's a great one.
Yeah, look, people may accuse me of bragging or talking always about me, but I had those situations when I was selling watches. Parents approached me with a similar wish, and you would be insane presenting a Rolex. Back then we had Patek and VC. We didn't have Laurent Ferrier or anything else. But your first shot would be a high-end dress watch and not a Rolex.
All right, we got a new piece up on the screen here, Mr. Higgins. The Armin Strom Gravity Equal Force Ultimate Sapphire Purple. I don't know if you had the chance to see this article on Monochrome yet. It looks like a beautiful,
no, not yet.
Beautiful guilloche dial. Let's have a look. So this is a 17. What's this? Let's have a look. Definitely guilloche dial. To mark the brand's 10th anniversary, the Gravity Equal Force introduces the world to the first stop work declutch mechanism combined with an automatic movement. This technical tour de force, fully explained in this video, was launched in the brand's System 78 sub collection, designed to offer exceptional, innovative watchmaking at a more contained prices.
So where's the constant force or equal force?
I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Is that a remontoir, or how do they do that?
Yeah, let's get into.
I think you better prepare if you.
No, I just pulled this up. This was new, so I was like,
no. Let's have a look at the movement.
It's actually not bad price.
Description. 20. No. Usually, no. Scroll down.
How much is it?
Scroll down.
No.
So movement, and then they are explaining.
27-ish. Yeah, 27. Okay, so the main plate, this is a hand guilloche main plate by Kari Voutilainen. That's interesting on the dial. All right, so we got in-house developed movement, automatic micro rotor with stop work mechanism, purple guilloche main plate, 3.5 hertz.
Okay.
Screwed balance with steel spiral, stop seconds mechanism, off-centered. Yeah, and again, it's also quite affordable too. At British pounds, 27.3.
Yeah, I have to check this out. Sounds interesting, but I don't know enough about it.
Wonder if the dial is hand guillocheed or not. I don't know if they talk about the dial. Let me look at the dial. See where they talk about the dial in a bit more here. Who's got that noise playing in the background?
Here, my telephone rings. I'm trying to ignore it.
Yeah, honestly, not a bad looking watch. I mean, purple is obviously also very polarizing, guys. Like, I think when that World Time came out in purple, a lot of people didn't like it just because of the color. Like, people can see these visually, but like, it's also putting these on the wrist. Like, do you really see yourself wearing a purple watch? Like, I don't know. To me, I think the color choice is not really that great. Purple is obviously very polarizing. Let us have a look a little closer here.
I don't hate the color. I quite like it.
Yeah. Would you be wearing a purple? Like, would you rock a purple watch specifically?
I might. Yeah, I think that could go with. I wear a lot of blue, generally blue and black, so I think I could go with that.
It looks like the sub-seconds is like a sapphire disc here, Higgins. Looks like a transparent-ish
Yeah.
sapphire disc. Pretty cool. And look, it seems like it's a hand guilloche dial. Could be wrong on that. Like, look at the price point too. Like, there's going to be some skimping on the price point. What does it say on the dial? Yeah, hand guilloche. So that's good. Hand guilloche, main plate by Kari Voutilainen.
The movement looks like a machine finishing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I don't think we're getting too great.
But you have inward angles. You can see. Can you see those 3 cocks?
Yeah, you can see them right here. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right here is pretty nice. Right here is pretty nice. Right here is pretty nice. And here's nice. Like, there's some level of decent finishing on this piece, right? And especially if the dial's hand guilloche. And at that price point, like, it's actually not bad, man. Like, because the first thing RC is going to go to is like, hey, it's expensive. It's expensive. But, like, I don't know, man. Doesn't look that expensive to me.
You ignored my previous question because Monochrome showed one of my personal former watches.
Oh, did it? Which one? Show me the article. Or did you?
Well,
do you have it in the private chat?
Yeah, you guess which one it is.
Oh, is it a recent article? That's one of your former watches.
It is in the last week.
In the last week. Okay, so let's go through.
And the watch was mine.
Was yours? Okay, so let me see what could be yours. Obviously, these are not yours. It could be the Chapek. Could be the Chapek. Let me keep. I want to make sure I can see all of them within the last week. Higgy would never wear that. He would never wear the Stoa Flieger. GMT, no. Nah, you don't have this watch. You definitely don't have an Indian watch. All right, I'm going to go with my guess is this one. It was the Chapek. Wasn't the Chapek? So then if it wasn't the Chapek, was it the Breguet?
No.
So which one was it?
Yeah, very recent. Pull up that Vacheron article from Singapore.
Singapore. Let's have a look.
So that is a Singapore watch collectors club, and I sold my Vacheron to one of those members. I had this exactly Vacheron with the black dial, gold case, black dial. I owned it for almost 20 years. Back then, I was selling them like crazy, particularly in platinum with the salmon dial. And yeah, one day I scratched all my money and bought the one with a black guilloche dial. But I was too scared to wear it, and yellow gold is not my thing. So it was in the drawer for 20 years, unworn. Developed some patina. Survived a burglary because the burglars didn't find it when they raided my home. And then I decided to put it on Chrono 24, and it was idling there for over a year until someone from Singapore approached me. He bought it dead cheap. He was super happy with it and showed me pictures of the watch. He got it restored by Vacheron, and he bought a second one because he likes this particular model so much. And apparently I know that he's member of the Singapore watch club, and they collected 15 of those, sent them all to Vacheron for restoration. They engraved one of the cocks in a special kind of way, and now presented them on monochrome. And there are 2 with black dials, and one of them is mine.
So do you think this is your specific watch? Like, this could actually be the one that you sold?
Well, you see that group shot with the 15 Vacherons that they had for restoration. You can see 2 with the black dial. So one of them is mine.
It's an interesting.
There is a group shot of all 15.
No, I know. I'm just trying to find the specific black dial one. Let me go back to the original shot. Does he have? Yeah. Okay. It's the top here.
I think in the headliner. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, one of these 2 is your piece,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, an interesting piece, right? Like, you're all about the lugs sometimes. So was that something that factored into, when you bought this piece? Like, is this a lug design that you still love today on these watches, or is this something from your past? Because this is definitely a very interesting lug design on these watches, right?
So not at all. The lug design was something that didn't attract me. I was fascinated by the movement and the guilloche dial. In my opinion, that 47101 It lives and dies with the dial. And the question is that the Guilloche dial or not?
Look, Raphael Young is chiming in here, letting you know that he is the
Hey.
president of the Singapore club, and his cock is engraved. Now, we did get a bit more info, so let's help Ark Your Ski, because was very generous to send in the super chat, and we want to help him pick the right watch for his son. So he's giving us a bit more information. His son is a tennis player, ski racer, so obviously we could assume that he's athletic, theoretical math major, so intelligent, good grooming, so a mix for sure. So, like, Higgins, now knowing that he may be obviously an intellectual that likes to be active. What are you changing the Laurent Ferrier? Do you think that's not going to work with an active lifestyle? What do you think?
I think that then the AP Royal Oak would be a good guess. But Ark Your Sky, a totally different level would be the Laurent Ferrier Grand Sport, which is around 50. But that would be, in my opinion, the ultimate watch for your son.
Yeah, and learning a bit more about him, right? Like, maybe they want something that's, could be like I think GMT. I think ABC may have been actually on the right track with a pre-ceramic Rolex. Not really the hype pieces, but still neo-vintage cool. Can be used. Can be obviously sporty. Can be used at all points in time. They're still a usable watch. I would even say, going a little bit further into the 16710 GMT Pepsi. This watch, you can have it as a Pepsi, as a Coke, or as a just a black insert. So it's very, very versatile. Can obviously be used for sport. Pretty cool. Still a Rolex. Still identifiable. Would fit the wrist because it's a slimmer. The design's a bit slimmer in the pre-ceramic. So this is also a good option for your Ark Your Ski. I'm still very much thinking to get your son Rolex, unless Jonathan's not wrong, but like unless your son really likes watches, because you get him a Laurent Ferrier. Go ahead, ABC. Sorry.
Another good thing about that watch, is you can put a Jubilee bracelet on there as well.
Yeah. I mean, you got versatility, I think, in the 16710. One of my favorite GMTs, and I think this is going to maybe tone Higgy down a bit, because I know Higgins' favorite Rolex is the GMT Masters, so he may be a little bit more open to offering this as a present, even though Higgins is trying to fill up that entire 30 grand.
I'm so totally against your advice. You're so Rolex minded that it's not even funny.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about somebody who's not a watch collector, right? Like, I'm thinking about somebody who, if you give them a Laurent Ferrier, you also have to explain to them what it is, right? Like,
yeah.
And it kind of, to me, that kind of is besides the point, on certain things, because if his son was a watch collector or a watch enthusiast, yeah, obviously they would understand, what's going into it. But if it's a gift, as a, statement piece, to commemorate a special occasion, I don't think you can get better than Rolex. I really don't think you can. Like, I mean, I'm gonna, as the guy named Patek Philippe, I don't think you're gonna get better than Rolex for a gift or a statement piece. What's going on, Kelslowitz? It's happening. I've been talking about Skeleton Key for the past couple of days. For those that don't know, Kelslowitz worked on the new upcoming Star Wars series called Skeleton Key, and he says it is going to be epic to check out. So I'm super excited for that, Kelslowitz. Whenever it comes out, I don't even know when that's releasing, but I'm excited to see it.
My favorite tire kicker.
It's funny. We were talking about this the other day about Kelsowitz's brand reimage, about how he was the perpetual tire kicker, and not many people remember him like that because he's gone through so much of a reimage on it. But it's pretty cool. Okay, so Kelslowitz says Skeleton Key releases on Christmas. Oh, dude, you're gonna have me watching this on Christmas, man. Like, because I think it's something like 8 episodes, so I'm gonna be binge watching that all over, like definitely during Christmas. I actually do like the James Bond marathon, Higgins, because on U.S. television, they used to do this back in the day on, I think the channel was like TNT or something. They used to do 14 days of 007 as an anticipation or a run up to Christmas. And so I try to do that. I try to watch like a Bond movie at night if I can during Christmas. I don't know if that's something you do, but it's
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a closet Bond fan. A lot of people know. I'm not that obviously into it as much as you are, but definitely I like the series.
So why don't you call me before you're watching it or after you're watching it, and we're talking about what you've seen and what you've noticed.
Yeah, I never actually thought of that. It's actually a really good idea. I never really thought of that. I don't know why.
We could make a section actually on elite horology.
Doing Bond Talk? Bond Talk in a relaxed format. I think it's going to be very, very heated because you're going to know a lot more about obviously the movie than I am.
As an example, so if you do a Bond marathon, you're starting with Dr. No. And there is one scene I've seen Dr. No probably 25 times.
Mhm.
It never really was in my memory. But I talked with a friend over it, and there is one scene where Bond is meeting a lead in a kind of bar, and they are playing that folk song "Jump Up," and you can see one guy dancing his brain off, a little bit like Marcello. And once you see that scene, and you realize how goofy that guy dances, you will never forget that. So
I'm trying to
everybody
think.
watch
Yeah.
Dr. No and watch that guy dancing his soul off.
I'm gonna definitely check that out because yeah, Doctor No is one of my favorite movies, and it's not even like a lot of people don't consider it to be like the best. I really like that movie. I think I like it better than From Russia with Love, the second one, but I know you would fight me on that. We got $2 from Zeppy. I'm a Higgy simp. Please subscribe to his channel. So Higgins, this is your opportunity to spruik your channel because somebody is paid for it.
Well, my channel or our channel, it's OC's, and my channel is Elite Horology, and we're doing Watch Talk. Actually, I'm planning to do a Watch Talk tonight about just this Vacheron from the Singapore Watch Club.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me know. Let me know. You're going to be doing that at 9 o'clock Hamburg time, which is
Yes.
Okay, so that's 8 o'clock UK time or 3 o'clock here on the East Coast for everybody in North America. Check that out, Elite Horology channel. I pop on once in a while when Higgins is struggling to pull up images. I did want to pivot to James Bond watches, the complete movie timeline. Let's go through it, Higgins. This is from 2022. We got the 6538. We talked about this earlier. The Dr. No. I don't think we need to go through too much of that, but
no. But, I think that is a very significant watch because we James Bond fans haven't solved the riddle where this particular watch came from and how it got. I think it has an alligator strap. How that watch came on a leather strap, which is quite unusual for a Submariner, particularly in that time. So there are several speculations. One speculation is that the producer Cubby Broccoli owned that watch and just lent it to Sean Connery. There is another theory that one of the crew members owned one and borrowed it. But then the question is, why did it show up again then in Goldfinger? And even in From Russia with Love, you can see him wearing it. So it is a big riddle where this particular watch comes from and what the history of it is.
Just to stay on topic for Art Gearski, because it seems like his son is actually his pick is currently a chalk. So his son definitely knows about modern Rolex. So that obviously gives us a bit more information. But he's not, he's dropping 50. But I'm dropping 50 no matter how hard he's worked. So I don't think he means I'm not dropping 50.
Yeah.
So look, it seems like he likes modern Rolex. So that's also another option, in going into gold pieces. You can get I don't know if you can get a gold sub, at least not a modern 41 in the 30 range. You could probably maybe in the 40 or a previous gen gold sub on that. That's an option. You've got obviously the option on the root beer. So if he does like gold, right, two-tone. Again, I think Rolex, you have to stick with Rolex. It seems like he wants Rolex, so definitely stick in that area. Statement piece, again, you've got day dates that you can get in that price range. Obviously, it may not be completely modern, but you can go a little bit further back. You can get, modern GMT two-tone in that range. You can get close to probably gold in that range as well. Maybe not be the most latest version, but a previous version. That's what I'd be looking at for a statement piece. I'd probably be looking for something precious metal, something they wouldn't wear every day. But if you are looking for that day-to-day, that's why I offered the option of the Datejust, because it's still a Rolex. It's something they could use every day. That honestly, I think from my posterity perspective or longevity perspective would probably stick with them. They wouldn't be flipping it necessarily.
Tan, can I interrupt you? He didn't mention that this should be a daily wearer. And again, sorry, this is the classic case of somebody who has already a Rolex or two. So why not go with a leather strap with an elegant watch to mark that occasion? And I'm going to bring in a Calatrava.
I think that just after he described that his son is looking for like a two-tone or like a two-tone or anything maybe in rose gold, right? Like I think that individual, I mean, you could be going into like white gold, like Yachtmaster ranges and stuff like that. I think it's more sporty. Like he mentioned, his son plays tennis. His son like skiing, right? Like they need, I think that they would want to wear, but again, right? Like a gold piece, are you really going to go skiing in your, solid gold Yachtmaster, even on Oyster Flex, right? Not everybody's going to do that. So that's why I'm saying maybe they want to buy a piece that, is a statement piece, is a gift. But like if my dad gave me a gift, I'd want to wear it as much as possible, right? I wouldn't want to hide it in a safe for 20 years, right? So I would want something that I could use. So I would go with that. Arcurski is something that's usable, maybe in the sport range. If you want to throw in some precious metal, you got a lot of options. Yachtmaster, you've got sub as an option if you go a bit newer, and a bit older than the 41, I would say. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, you got tons of options, I would say, in that range. Back to Dr. No and back to James Bond. So I had mentioned earlier, Higgins, that the story was that was potentially Albert Broccoli's watch, but you said that still hasn't been corroborated yet. Is that correct?
Say it again. That is
the 6538 that Connery wore.
Yeah.
In Dr. No, and like you mentioned in subsequent films, like like you said, Goldfinger and other films. Is there speculation on whether that watch was Broccoli's watch, or
yes?
Okay. I thought that was the common story, was that was Broccoli's watch, and because Rolex wasn't going to give the film a watch, that they used Broccoli's watch off of his wrist.
Yep, Rolex never did proper product placement until recently. I think that rule has changed, but it was hammered in stone that Rolex doesn't pay to be shown in movies for decades.
All right, let's go on to another amazing film. We got the Breitling Top Time with the Geiger counter here from Thunderball. Great movie.
Well, what made the watch memorable was a custom-made outer case that made the watch look really fancy. So what they did was they were cutting off the lugs just to make it capable for this outer case, and very mysteriously that outer case showed up a couple of years ago, and a friend of mine identified it and took 3D scans. And I'm still waiting for mine. So the watch that you see in the movie was a Top Time, but they cut off the lugs just to make it capable to be in that custom-made outer case.
All right, we got the Gruen from the famous. What says?
Yeah, that has never been confirmed. There is one self-proclaimed James Bond watch expert who is pushing Gruen. I have my doubts that it's Gruen, and it has never been confirmed. So that is garbage.
And even this article says they speculate it's from Connery's private collection. I don't know.
That is one of the speculations, yes.
Okay. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, George Lazenby, Archie's favorite Bond.
My favorite Bond as well.
Your favorite Bond, a pre-Daytona chronograph, 6238. Yeah. What do you think, Higgins? This is cool.
This gives my heart. It pains my heart because I got this particular watch offered in the 1990s when I started heavily collecting James Bond. A well-known James Bond seller offered this particular watch for me. It was just too expensive for me back then. We are talking about $10,000 So.
It's interesting though, because this whole story about George Lazenby, right? Like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going off of like my own just memory on this. Was he like a model or like not like, he took on this gig and he felt that this gig was really going to be his like, obviously a springboard for success. And then he didn't like. He tried to like I don't know if he tried to like fleece the movie companies for more money, and they kind of told him to fight off. Like he never really did more than one Bond, right? Like so. What was the story
about Lazenby?
Lazenby, yeah, George Lazenby,
yeah,
the watch that's associated with this one. So is that the story? Like, what was his story around not continuing with Bond
Lazenby
after?
He was a model. He didn't have any acting experience. Actually, he lied himself into the role because he was faking acting experience that he hadn't. But there is a famous quote from Cubby Broccoli, who said when Lazenby visited Eon Productions for the first time, he was walking in a hallway where the secretaries of Cubby were sitting, And he said that the girls were basically falling off their chairs when they saw Lazenby, and that is how he knew that Lazenby would be the right one. Fun fact is Lazenby bought a Submariner what is 5513. He bought a Submariner and he got a suit tailored by the same tailor who made the suits for Connery. So he prepared for the audition and finally got the role.
You know, Mr. Brightside saying ugly stainless steel Rolex Chrono just about as memorable as Lazenby's acting career, and that's kind of why I asked you that, because if we really think about it, right, like this is the watch he wore, you know, as Bond. I really wonder if, like, you know, if his choice or the choice were on chronographs, if we would have ever seen a Daytona.
It's not correct, Tan. Can I correct you? Most of the time, he's wearing a 5513. You can only see in a couple of minutes you can see this particular chronograph, and there is a big screenshot of this particular watch. But most of the movie he's wearing the 5513.
But that's what I was asking was that, like, you know, because he was also wearing a chronograph, it would have been interesting if he had continued that a Daytona could have obviously been part of the series. You know, the Submariner has been, you know, was pre Lazenby anyways. Like Connery was wearing the sub anyways. So it's like, I'm just more curious on, you know, in posterity, if he had continued, it could have been potentially a Daytona that we would have seen. We get into the Roger Moore movies. Let's talk about the Pulsar.
Just before you go on, Tam, that Daytona reminds me of Doc. That looks like something that would fit right into his collection.
Oh yeah, Doc BBW would be all over this. I'm sure when he sees this replay, he's going to, you know, he's definitely going to comment or send me a message offline. But yeah, back to the Pulsar, Higgins. What do you think of the Pulsar? Pretty cool.
I mean, I'm at an age where everybody thought that those are the watches of the future. I mean, we were reading the time from traditional dials, and then one day we're waking up and having this display of time. I was a young kid back then, and I found it super cool, and I was hooked. And I remember when I had my first LED watch, I drained the battery within a day because I couldn't stop pushing the button and reading the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that the digital era was, you know, look, I mean, obviously these are movies, right? So they're going to show the latest technology. You know, they're not going to be wearing, like, you know, technology from 20 years before, right? So made sense, obviously, you know, in the films, and obviously with Bond and his gadgets, that, you know, he would align with something a bit more technically advanced. So that's the Pulsar watch. This is the piece that Higgins was referring to, the 5513 Submariner, being worn in many movies. Obviously, you know, you talk about 5513. How many Bonds actually wore this watch? I know Connery, not Connery. I know that Roger Moore wore this watch. I believe Dalton wore this watch. Or did Dalton wear a 16800? I don't remember.
16800, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then.
There's only Connery and Moore and Lazenby.
Lazenby. Yeah. Okay, so you said Lazenby wore it in the previous previous gems. Lazenby. Then you got Moore. Connery wore a 5513 in which movie?
No, not 5513. I thought now Submariner. So
if you talk
5513, it is Lazenby and Moore.
Lazenby and Moore, yeah, because Dalton goes to the 16900. He goes to the date sub.
Yeah.
We've got $2 from Zeppi, who says, "Newsflash: the horns on Fatso's header pushes." Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. 551.
Actually, when you're looking as close as watch fans and James Bond fans combined, you will see that most of the time when you think it's a 5513, it's actually a 1680. Particularly in The Man with the Golden Gun, where you have that big wrist shot of a 5513 when he's in Hong Kong. In virtually all other scenes of the movie, if you look closely, you can see a Cyclops. So the speculation is that it was Moore's personal watch that he was wearing for most of the time.
Okay, cool. Guys, I actually got to run. Jock was supposed to actually do the dungeon at this time. I only had up until this point. But what I might do is I might do something pre the Elite Horology, because I know you got a watch show tonight. Well, for us in North America, it's going to be about 3 p.m. on the East Coast, noon on the West Coast. Higgins is going to be doing a show on his channel at 3 o'clock. So what I might do is I might end the show right now. Jock's not doing a dungeon. I might try to come back a little later prior to your show, Higgins, to do maybe a little drama recap. Maybe I'll do like a live locks report, and then I'll maybe transfer it over to you. Final words, guys. What do you guys think here, Higgins and ABC? Good watch talk, I thought, for a bank holiday afternoon for you guys.
Yeah, loved it. Thanks for having me.
Higgins, you're back, man. Everyone's happy to see you on the panel. A lot of positive.
That was just an exception because
We'll take it. We'll take a cameo appearance by Higgins. I don't know how I did it. I don't know if I was talking Bond. I don't know what it is, but I'm glad I did it. Really,
I apologize to ABC because I was talking so much.
No, hey, look, it was a great show.
No, I learned incredible amounts like I usually do from you guys.
Yeah, guys, super fun. I really appreciate obviously everybody spending their time with us here. I'm gonna run you guys a little outro and then we'll end the show, guys. Take care. I'll see you guys a little later.